After a season of disappointment, a disappointing season for Bulls fans, hopefully the players, coaches, and front office as well, we're going to ask a question today. Should any Chicago Bull player be untouchable in trade talks if those trade talks do open? We're also going to look at the season of Billy Donovan and evaluate him as a coach, plus Javonte Green and Derrick Jones Jr. We're getting into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. Now, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. Well, first off, if you want to follow me, you can do so at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. If you want to follow the show, you can do so at Bulls Central Pod. But enough of me. We're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about these Bulls. So, with the season that the Bulls have had, right, and when you look at how, shout out to Jimmy Butler and the Milwaukee Bucks first off for beating. Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat for beating the Milwaukee Bucks in 4-1, and just the way that they won that series. And with all the talk and reframing the Jimmy Butler trade talks and all this and that, it looks like the Bulls ended up losing that, but we'll see. The story's still being written on that one. But with that being said, in improving the team, hopefully this summer, right? I'm going to ask the question: should any Bulls player be untouchable? Now, that does not mean that you're shopping every single Chicago Bulls player, but that means if a meaningful deal comes on the table and it can drastically improve your team, bring a superstar talent to this team, is there anyone on this team who should be untouchable in those talks? Now, you guys already know, I don't think DeMar DeRozan should be untouchable, and even though I don't think that Zach LaVine should be the one to be traded now, I don't think Zach LaVine should be untouchable either, depending on if the right deal comes about, right? That it really depends on the level of deal. But then when you look at the rest of this team, right, and how far we are away, and I know, yes, we have more talent than what our record would indicate, right? We know that is part of why we are disappointed in this team, because this team does have talent. And when you look at that talent, when you look at what we have, you're trying to build on top of that. And I know a lot of Bulls fans, and I see you guys in the comments, the Bulls should rebuild, the Bulls should go full rebuild. It's not coming. And much like I've said to you guys in yesterday's episode, at some point, at least for me, right? Everybody else, that you're your own person, you do your own thing. I stopped putting my energy into things that aren't going to happen. AK has told us they are not going full rebuild. That is not what's happening. So, all the talk on the Bulls should go full rebuild, it's not happening, right? It's just not. And so when you look at anything that becomes available, and we know the Dame Lillard, the Jaylen Brown, all those, talks of players that could become available, right? And if those players do, and, with the Dame thing, I think at that point you definitely need to hold on to Zach, in my opinion. But regardless of anything else, who should still be untouchable on this roster? And the reason why I ask that is because it seems like AK, our president of basketball operations, does have people being untouchable that like I said, in the right deal, I don't think they should be. Patrick Williams, to me, I understand the promise in Patrick Williams. And I'm not sitting there, and I would not be on the phone shopping Patrick Williams today, what can I get for Patrick? What can I get for Patrick? But in trying to improve your team, you have to be open to hearing everything. And I do think that a deal could become available that, hey, it would maybe make sense to include Patrick Williams in, depending on what that level of deal. For example, if Brandon Ingram became available, I would even say this, and I know this may be controversial, right? Even if a young player like a Mikal Bridges became available, while I'm not saying that, hey, it should be a Mikal Bridges for Patrick Williams swap, but if that's the level play, if you can get a Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, and Patrick Williams is the one that's keeping you from getting that deal done, I don't think that's necessarily where we should be. I understand the promise in Patrick Williams. I understand the promise in Kobe White. I love these two players. I want to see these two players be Bulls for a long time. But at some point, you have to ask yourself the question of, all right, what type of deal can we get done if the team on the other end wants these players? I don't think the Bulls right now have any player that should necessarily be untouchable. Now, there are players that you should be reluctant to trade if the deal doesn't make sense, right? You shouldn't give up all of your youth either for a team that is clearly far away. So players like Kobe White, players like Dalen Terry, players like Patrick Williams, I would assume if he ends up staying here, but even then I think Io's become a little bit more movable in that sense. But I think last year, coming out of last season, I think the Bulls would have absolutely looked at Iowa's untouchable. I think now he kind of fluctuates in there, but you want to keep and maintain enough of your young players to where you're not stuck, you're not strapped, you're not in a terrible place if you do have to move one of your older players, if players do start leaving, right? So again, not saying they should be shopping any of our young players, but I am saying that, hey, you're looking at this roster. Like I said, Alex Caruso, love Alex Caruso. I think if Alex Caruso was able to play his natural role, we're talking about a defensive player of the year candidate, right? Love DeMar. I like what DeMar can do when he's operating within the game plan, right? We know what his ability to score, especially in the fourth quarter, has meant. But again, you have a 34-year player that's about to be 34 years old, that's 1 year left on their deal. Again, not to say that you should necessarily be shopping, even though I do think when a DeMar you should be shopping, but I don't think even DeMar is untouchable. You look at Derrick Jones Jr. already talked. He definitely shouldn't be untouchable. Zach LaVine, while I would be reluctant in certain deals because you want to maintain, he's a young, versatile scorer who can be top 10 in the league in scoring. But again, in the right deal, should Zach LaVine be available? Absolutely. And I think more so what I'm trying to get across in this segment is just to say that while everybody should not be moved, while a full rebuild should not be the thing, in needing to improve this team, and your desire to, if your desire is truly to improve this team, to give you, for AK to give us the team that he claims that the city of Chicago deserves, you got to, every avenue has to be open in the right scenario, right? And by that, I mean superstar level scenario. I'm not talking about, hey, just for a deal that you're trading a couple of things and we're going to stay about the same. No, I mean that if a superstar becomes available, anybody and everybody should potentially be available, and you should try to maintain your picks if you can. But you guys can let me know what you think on that one down below. But like one of the things, even in that, even in thinking about that, right, and thinking and looking at this roster and how talented this roster is, I put this off far enough. Yet we have to evaluate head coach Billy Donovan. And again, I know that I draw some critique when I say this, and I understand why. But again, Billy Donovan is not a bad head coach. He's maybe bad for the Chicago Bulls. He may be not the right coach for this roster. He may be not the right coach for this situation, but he's not just generally a bad head coach. He's terrible at making adjustments, right? That is the thing. The players seem to really like him, except his little tizzy with Zach LaVine. But when you look at Billy Donovan, and some of the things that hurt him are the same things that hurt him over his career. The lack of adjusting, especially in fourth quarters. The fact if you put a really good X's and O's coach on the other side of the court against him, he's never really fared well in those situations. Billy Donovan is a coach that with the right roster, he can win you a lot of games. He can win you a lot of games. And it's very much in line with Jerry Reinsdorf, right? In the fact that win enough so the fans keep buying tickets, but the expectations aren't quite what they are. And that is probably why Billy Donovan isn't the right coach for this situation. He doesn't have an ownership group that is going to push him. He doesn't, right? He does not have an ownership group that is going to push him. Jerry Reinsdorf has said before in regards to the Sox that being second best is best because you're not bad enough, right? You're not bad enough that people aren't going to show up, but people are still going to buy tickets. And when you have a owner with that mindset, even though, yes, it's come out and they've said that Jerry really isn't as involved in the day-to-day as fans think, it's really Michael Reinsdorf, I don't give a damn. The Spider-Man meme, they're pointing at each other, the same damn person, right? Even though Michael it seems to be a little bit more flexible, but at the same time, right? When you bring in Billy Donovan to a team to ownership group that isn't the type of owners that are just, no, we are championship or bust. We need to get to a title. We're going to fight, scrap, do whatever we can to get this team we're going to pay whatever we need to pay to get this team to the championship level. We don't have that type of ownership group. So with a head coach in Billy Donovan that is going to win some games for you, right? He's going to cost you some games too, but if you give him the right roster, he's going to do enough to win you some games. That is a perfect storm of badness for Chicago Bulls fans. And when you look at Billy Donovan as well, things that coaching does, right? That you want to look and you want to get from your coach. You want to try to develop your younger players if you have those younger players. You want to, of course, try to win games, and you want to have a system that is best utilizing your players. Billy Donovan is doing none of those three things. We haven't seen, and even Kobe, I'm not giving Billy Donovan credit for Kobe White's progression and development. I'm not. I'm looking at Kobe White, and I see what he did this offseason, see how he added to his game. I honestly think and everybody may not share this opinion, and that's fine. But in looking at Billy Donovan and the little bit of glimpses of progression and development we've gotten from players under him, I'm more so giving that to the players because Kobe White went out in the offseason and he did enough to change his game that it forced Billy Donovan to have to play him. And then we still saw Billy Donovan not use him in situations where he was the best defender and scorer, and we put him on the bench and sided defense, right? That's a problem by a head coach. Building up the confidence of your players. Like, again, we've said it. I've gone over the stats with you. When things actually run through Patrick Williams to a degree, he has not earned the right to have the offense run through him overall. But when you involve Patrick Williams in the game plan and you call at least 6 to 8 plays for him on top of the shots that he's already going to take, and he can get 10 to 12 shots, Patrick Williams almost averages 16 and 6 in those scenarios. But we have a head coach that basically sticks him out in the corner and says, figure it out. And then when he doesn't, he gets benched. And don't get me wrong, Patrick Williams' own lack of aggression, lack of focus, right, plays into that as well. He has to own that part of his development. But the coach, in putting you in a situation that's going to force growth and development, force you to kind of have to make decisions, Billy Donovan doesn't do that. And the same thing, like Dalen Terry, I will say this, I do think the Bulls had a development plan for Dalen Terry just because of how unrefined his game was, that he wanted to go down in the G League. If you watch those G League games, every game he worked on something specific. He wasn't going to get that type of reps at the NBA level, but even then, for a team that needed some energy, we didn't see Billy Donovan go to Dalen really at all. In games where the games were out of hand and we just needed a little spark, didn't see him do that, right? Ayo Dosunmu, again, Ayo took a way step back. But again, Billy Donovan did start Ayo Dosunmu. He allowed him to earn that starting position. He allowed him to work his way into the rotation last year in his rookie season. But even then, right, he hasn't developed. Ayo came in as an older rookie, and we saw that in his rookie season with the way that he was able to perform. But then when it came time to develop between season 1 and season 2, we didn't see that, right? Ball, again, taken out of his hands. And Billy Donovan's reliance on DeMar DeRozan, another thing that is like a safety net for him. I just think when you look at Billy Donovan and the coaching that he's done, and not all of it's been bad, but a lot of it has. And so in evaluating Billy Donovan as a head coach, to me, listen, it's a D, bro. Like, the fact of the matter is, right? Yes, we went on a 9-game winning streak, and despite some Bulls fans trying to act like it was just Chris Fleming, no, we started that when we were 3 games into that winning streak, and Billy Donovan was still coming up with the game plan. But the fact of the matter is this. Once the league starts adjusting to what Billy Donovan does, he does not adjust back. And that's what we saw from season 1 with this team to season 2 with this team. And so, and then when you look at the secret extension for Billy Donovan, it's so much with this, and it's centered around Billy Donovan. And again, he's not the only problem. Changing out Billy Donovan doesn't necessarily make this team better. It may help refine this team some, but it's just Billy Donovan leaves a lot to be desired. And so I can't give Billy Donovan anything over a D minus personally, just because of the expectations into the season. The fact that in every single press conference, Billy Donovan says all the right things. But then we don't run a game plan and we don't have the 3-point shooters. I get that. But we did have size this season in Andre Drummond and didn't utilize that. There were games where we absolutely needed size in Patrick Williams at the 4 because Alex Caruso was just getting outworked because of size and players' arm length, and we didn't do that. And I understand that in games that Patrick Williams wasn't playing well, but we're talking about in games where he was cooking. The Vooch of it all, right? Nikola Vucevic cooking in the first half and then only touches the ball 3 times in the second half of games. That is on coaching. And no, everything is not Billy Donovan's fault, but some of it is. And he has to hold and own what is on him, in my opinion. You guys can let me know what you think on everything down below. All right. I also wanted to throw in player evaluations on this episode for Javonte Green and DJJ. And again, this isn't going to be long, so just a heads up. It's hard to evaluate Javonte Green's season. He did not play in very many games this season at all. And then even when he did, he didn't really have the impact. He had some flashes of it, right? And I do think he would have been the starting power forward for us again, albeit having some issues with that too as a 6'5" guy. But Javonte played in 32 games this season. He missed 50 games this season. And when you look at his averages, they were down from last season as well. The 3-point percentage went up 2 points. So shout out to that. The field goal percentage stayed about the same. The points per game were down 2 points per game. And that's cool, right? We know that him and Alex Caruso were leading the league in deflections and things like that. And so it's not because Javonte didn't necessarily play the best. It's just the fact that there is such a small sample size and he only averaged 15 minutes per game, whereas last season it was almost 24 minutes per game. It's hard to evaluate Javonte Green's season. It was a disappointment, but not a disappointment necessarily because of just his play on the court. It was a disappointment because he just didn't see the court enough to make the impact that we needed and expected from him coming into the season. And so Javonte's season, again, when it's because of injury, when it's because of not being able to stay healthy, I try to not put that on the player and their performance on the court. But in the 32 games we got from Javonte Green, it was pretty much the same as last season. And that's fine. It wasn't bad last season, right? And especially in the role that he came in, playing power forward, which that's not his natural position. Javonte Green is a dog. And he deserves to be able, and again, much like I said with Alex Caruso, if you're able to play Javonte in more of his natural position, we're going to have a hell of a player in Javonte Green. But the fact of the matter is this, the highlight dunks, the great defensive plays, all that, we just didn't get enough of it this season. And we may not even have it next season because he is an unrestricted free agent this season. So looking at Javonte, I'm going to give Javonte C- as well for Javonte, but just because of it's hard, right? C- almost D just because of this lack of ability to get on the court. Now, when you look at Derrick Jones Jr., I'm going to bury the lead here. Derrick Jones Jr., for his role, keep in mind, all these grades are based off their role. So a B for Zach LaVine and a B for Andre Drummond are going to be very different because of their roles on the team. And I think Derrick Jones Jr. exceeded in his role this season. When you look at never having a clear role, always again, like is going to be said with a lot of these players, playing out of position consistently, right? Derrick Jones Jr. in his best performance for the Bulls last season and this season has been when he's played the backup center. And we all know that is not Derrick Jones Jr.'s natural position, right? We know that. This guy, yes, he's 6'6", but he's only 210 pounds. But the fact of the matter is this. Every game Derrick Jones Jr. got in, he found a way to impact the game. He played in 61 games for the Chicago Bulls, only 14 minutes over those 61 games. And yes, the averages of 5 points per game, 2.4 rebounds, almost less than 1 assist, right? 50% shooting from the field, 33% shooting from three-point range. Those averages don't mean anything because Derrick Jones Jr. is a player that you had to watch to understand his impact on the game. And he always found that way to impact it. And I like that he's opting into his contract. I think that could be a value contract for the Chicago Bulls going forward. I absolutely do. And looking at Javonte for what his role, I keep mixing it up. Looking at Derrick Jones Jr. for what his role is, it's a B. It's a B for me. Like, I would have loved to see him play more minutes. I would have loved to see him actually have a spot in the rotation that you just knew what he was going to play night in and night out, especially in the season where Javonte Green was hurt most of the season. Again, that goes back to coaching. If you can't tell, there's a theme in this episode. So that's kind of my thoughts on the seasons from Javonte and Derrick Jones Jr. Let me know what you guys think down below. That is it for today's episode of Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See Red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.